liberale Fraktion hat jetzt das Wort Herr Vorsitzender Verhofstadt.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So, if I understand it well, the last intervention is that the source of nationalism and populism is here. We are the source of nationalism and populism. If you defend Europe, if you defend European vision, if you defend European civilization, then you're accused today to be the source of nationalism and protectionism. It's ridiculous, dear friends, to hear that. It's ridiculous at the one hand, but yeah, it is quite a huge problem that we face, because in one point Mr. Kamal is right. The rise of nationalists and populists is a reality, because large parts of our population see no longer Europe as the solution. It's true, what Mr. Weber said. Young people are in favor of Europe, and on the other hand, you have many large parts of the population who don't no longer see Europe as the solution. And that is the real crisis in Europe for the moment. This split between generations, you could say, between young people believing in a future, in a European future, and others who have huge problems with it. And why they have problems with it, let's face it together. Not the young generations, the other parts. I think it's important to do that at the moment of the State of the Union. Well, I think that people have the impression that their lives is not longer in control anymore by the politicians that they have elected, neither on a national level, neither on the European level. And what they see is terrorism, tax evasion, international crime, migration flows, and so on. And they have the feeling not to be protected against it. On the contrary, they see forces like competition, free market, free trade as a source of unfairness, as a source of inequality, rather than what I believe, that is that competition, free trade and so on is a source of new opportunities and of progress for the future. And that is the problem for the moment on the European continent. And it is in such an environment where you have a split between generations and people who have lost the control over their lives and don't believe that we politicians are capable to control their lives and to help them in their fears. It's in such an environment that you see the rise of nationalism and populism, not only in Europe, let's face it. Mr. Trump in the US is another example. Here we have our own nationalists and populists, from Madame Le Pen to Mélenchon. I don't see the difference from time to time. And they all preach one thing, a false sense of security. They believe that with walls and fences we can solve the problem, that we can keep problems outside our territories. With walls and fences they solve every problem. Migration problem is solved with that, climate change is solved with that. Every problem they solve with walls and fences. And I think it's wrong. How you keep climate change outside your borders? With fences? With walls? How you keep terrorists outside your borders? With national walls or fences, or with a European policy instead? And how you deal, for example, with tax evasion and with offshoring? You can only do that with supranational policies and supranational instruments in the future. But it's true, I believe that the discontent, the fear, the anger of our citizens is caused by this fracture. A fracture that is that on the one hand we have globalization of our world, and on the other hand democratic policies were still only in fact being developed on a national, a local level. And it is, in my opinion, this imbalance that was the basis also for the financial crisis in 2008, because the markets were global and our policies were not. And it is also there where you find our weakness of Europe, faced with Putin, faced with autocrats like Erdogan and so on. So I think if you want really to give a positive response to the fears of our citizens and to regain control over their lives, we need European solutions and European capacities the fastest as possible. And that does not mean that does not mean abolishing national democracy. It means complementing them. And that means, at the same time, in my opinion, you could say that in one word, Europe is not the source, but is the counterweight for wild and uncontrolled globalization. And at the same time, Europe is also the cure against the cancer of nationalism that we have today in Europe. And so, that is, in my opinion, the right analysis to make. And I think that you have responded to that with a list of concrete proposals. And I see three essential proposals in that. First of all, this European Defence Union. I should say, finally, is the third attempt, Mr. Juncker. The first time in '54, refused by the French National Assembly. Let's not talk about that. It's good that France now is coming back to their mistake of '54. We did a new attempt in 2003. You remember that. And we failed also. Now I'm very pleased with the proposals already backed by the Hungarian and the Polish governments. So let's do it, because let's be honest to each other, it are not longer the Americans who will take responsibility in our neighbourhood. We shall do it ourselves, or it shall not be done in our neighbourhood. And secondly, certainly if Trump is elected, I don't make me any illusion about this unwillingness from their side to do something. Secondly, a good real governance for the euro and the economy. Let's be honest, we cannot continue, Gianni and Manfred, like we are doing now. The Stability and Growth Pact, you say, yeah, we have to apply it, and then Gianni stands up saying, no, we don't apply it. And the reality is that that's the reality today. France have a Stability Pact, but they say it's no problem, the Stability Pact, we don't apply it. And you have Germany, on the other hand, but we have still the Stability Pact, even when we don't apply it. That's the reality of today. We have to change it. And I encourage you, Mr. Juncker, to push forward the 5 Presidents' report with the Treasury, with the Minister of Finance, with the fiscal capacity in the Eurozone, with the Convergence Code, the fastest as possible, because this little game with the Stability Pact cannot continue anymore. We lose any credibility towards the outside world. And the last point, I think, is in fact a common migration and asylum policy, the fastest as possible. Have we the possibility to create this, to do these achievements? Have we the courage to do it? I think the environment is there, because let's look to Brexit. Brexit is not a liability, I see it more as an opportunity. And why I see it as an opportunity? As an opportunity because the British government wants to make from Brexit a success, and that's fair enough. That's their duty. But we have also our duty. And our duty, our responsibility is to make from Brexit a success for Europe, for all the citizens of Europe. And it is a possibility to end the dramatic complexity of our institution. So for me, and I want to conclude with that, Chair, Brexit is not a matter of punishment. It's not a matter of revenge. I never did politics like that. It's, in my opinion, a question of the sound relation between Britain and Europe, and moreover, it's about how we want Europe, our own European Union, in the future. That is at stake. And so my message today is very clear, and I stop there. Let's stop on both sides of the channel our collective depression. And let's use, in fact, stop the politics of division and seize this opportunity not to kill Europe, as some of you want, but to reinvent Europe. Thank you.
Setz dich ruhig wieder hin. Ich habe das gesehen. Dass Herr Verhofstadt, der Abgeordnete Betten